original people who were known for doing this, were they traditionally psychologists with family dynamics kind of backgrounds? Were they family counselors, essentially?
Sure. I think the field originally developed on the family business side. And you had people who were organizational dynamics, or they were, organizational behavior, say PhDs, who ended up working with businesses that they realized had all these family issues. And so they were applying their knowledge from the organizational behavior side and organizational design in some ways. You then, over time, had people who had grown up in their own family businesses, and then they realized, oh my gosh, I need these skills. So they went off and got a lot more expertise. And then there's people like me who really came from the legal background and said, the law can only go so far with this. And if I can't facilitate what happens with the implementation of plans, then I really haven't had the impact that I'd like to have as a professional. So I think you have a mix of that. I do believe you should have a solid technical training behind you. And I think that, psychology, law, something that has an objective, professional, analytical training behind really helps. I think that there are people in the financial services world who either have it naturally or can adapt over. But I think one of the challenges is that so much in the financial services world is about selling, which is persuading as opposed to facilitating. So.
Right. As you used the phrase self-knowledge, which is
Sure.
kind of a tricky thing to claim to have, or
True.
words like wisdom and
right.
all those words are tricky to apply.
Yeah.
If somebody is known primarily for their technical specialization and they see the need for this work, because you can't take this kind of coursework and not see the need. It's totally convincing you have the need.
Yeah.
What would you say to them by way of caution?
Be careful. Be careful about what you don't know, about what's going on behind the family. Be careful of your own good intentions as well. I think that you really have to honor the fact that so many people that I've come across in this field really want to help. And you have to be honest with yourself and honest with the family about where you're helping and where you're not. And I think that's something that is just, it's a driving force for so many people who end up working with families. They've chosen to work with private individuals as opposed to institutions and corporations because they probably have some connection that way, and sort of being honest about that. Self-knowledge, I agree, and honestly, I think anybody who calls himself a trusted advisor is probably, I think trust is earned as opposed to advertised. But I personally had to do a lot of just even, sort of career assessments, doing a lot of assessments of my own sort of skill sets. And one of them I went to said I'd be really unhappy as a lawyer, so that was sort of interesting. And the word that kept coming up when I did those assessments was facilitator. And honestly, if that word hadn't come up, then I would be very cautious about the shift that I've made.
I've heard you use the phrase handle or hand off.
Yeah.
How does that fit?
Sure. I think that if you're walking into a family situation that has these complex issues that you're dealing with, how are we going to give together? How are we going to run our business together? How are we going to invest together? You have to figure out how far can you go along with that conversation, with that set of issues, and then when is somebody else appropriate to come in, And I've used it in the philanthropic space as well. So if you're a lawyer and you're working with a client about their estate plan, and they start asking you, you have the conversation about legacy and meaning and purpose, and they say, yes, I really care. And they talk about some topic area, and then they say to you, where should I give? And you have to say, this is not where I can go with you. I cannot tell you what organization to choose. There are other people who might help you sort of assess a number of different places, or you can do your own, sort of due diligence on them. Hand it off.
What are the economics of doing family meetings? Let's say somebody's primarily a financial advisor and they're being paid on assets under management, or they're an attorney billing for time, or they're an insurance agent on commission. They see their families really do need this, and the families are planning intolerant and they're fee intolerant.
Sure.
And yet they need it. What should such a person do then?
there's the rub. It's really complicated, and I don't think anybody has it exactly figured out yet. Having worked in several financial institutions, I've found that the economics of assets under management as a fee structure versus the kind of individual consulting and advice are really two completely different models that I'm not sure can easily be put under the same roof. So you really have to be careful if you're in a financial services institution. If you go too far down the path of really getting down into the trenches with the family and facilitating that family meeting, there's a risk that you will either give it away, which is undervaluing the service, and that's really not fair to the family nor to your professional expertise, or you will risk combining it with things that it doesn't belong with, and I think you really have to be careful. It's why I've chosen to have a small practice, 10 families or so, and there are some families for whom this can be done on a more simple in terms of leverageable model, and some that aren't, and you really have to figure out where you belong in that structure.
Thank you very much. That was extremely helpful.
Good, I'm glad. Thanks, Phil.